say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be.
Hello everyone and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and what do I say every week? Come on, say it with me. It's going to be another great show, Jay. We hear it every week. Of course it's going to be a great show because I've got another great guest, as I always do, and you're going to love John Peitzman. He goes by JP, but you're going to love him, and you're going to love this book that I'm holding up here on Facebook Live, The Build Framework, and a heart-based strategy for personal and professional growth. You're going to love this book. This book is absolutely, it's one of those reads that, first of all, it's not a long read. It's not going to take you long to read it, but it is so full of great things that you go, oh yeah, I should have known that. Why didn't I do that? That's what this book is. We're going to talk to John. He goes by JP, so you may hear me call him JP, but the book, again, is called The Build Framework. But let's do what we do every week, right? So what do we do every week? We check in with you in the 4 areas of your life. You know how I feel. I believe that we are 4-part people. We are physical people, we are mental people, we are emotional people, and we are spiritual people. And so let's check in those 4 areas and see how you're doing, all right? Let's start with the physical, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being amazing, where would you put yourself physically on that scale, right? It would be a 3, 4, 7, right? Then ask yourself why you would be there, right? Is it because you're not exercising like you should? Maybe you're not eating the things that you should, or maybe you're eating too much of a good thing, right? Or maybe it's pollen season and you're not feeling the same way. I mean, right now here in Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm just going to tell you right now, it's pollen season and it is crazy out here. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And so we are really, 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 we're really having a problem digging with the pollen season, and it's just rough. So I get it. So if you're on that scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And then ask yourself, okay, so what do I need to do to get to the next level? Because I'm not worried about you getting from a 3 to a 10 in a day, right? But I would like to see what can you do right now to get from a 3 to a 4. All right, you got that? Okay, let's move on to that mental area, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding, where are you at mentally? Right? And you might ask me, well, what do you mean mentally? Well, what I'm talking about there mentally is I'm asking you mentally, like, what are you feeding your brain, right? What are you learning? How are you growing in your brain, right? And there's 2 halves of the brain, right? There's the right side, the creative side, the left side, that's the logical side. And so we need to feed both sides of that brain. And what are you doing to do that? You know, are you reading something good that's getting you to learn? Maybe you're taking up a foreign language. How about a new instrument? Right? Those things can cross-section the entire brain, right? Because you're learning both the logical and you're also learning something fun and that's creative. So what are you doing to feed the brain? All right. And on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? All right. You got that number? Okay, so you got 2 numbers, right? The physical and the mental. And then 3, where are you at emotionally? And what do I mean by emotionally? I mean, what kind of think about yourself as having kind of an emotional intelligence, or sometimes you'll hear emotional quotient. But what I'm talking about here specifically is how well are you able to keep your emotions in check, especially when the little things happen, right? I can always tell when people are a little emotionally out of sorts when how well they deal with the stresses in their life, right? And so I'm going to ask you, how well are you dealing with the stresses in your life, and how well are you able to emotionally keep it together? Okay, on that scale of 1 to 10, 1 being awful, 10 being outstanding. Not only is it that, but how well are you able to tune in to the emotions of others, right? Are you able to tune into their emotions? Are you able to relate? Are you able to empathize with what they feel, right? I didn't say sympathy, I said empathy. Two different things. JP is going to talk about a little bit about that too, because he's going to talk a little bit about why empathy is so important, especially when we talk about the build framework. So where are you at emotionally, right? Are you able to keep it in check? Because it is a choice. Okay, 1 to 10, you got it? Okay, we got 3 numbers. Finally, the spiritual. So where are you at spiritually on that scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding? And what do I mean by the spiritual? Well, you know, I think when I say spiritual, I don't think I know. When I say spiritual, what is it that keeps you centered? What is it keeps you at peace? What is it that keeps you in that sense of calm, or that even though things around you can be falling apart, that you can have that sense of calmness that goes beyond the scientific or the emotional, right? And, for some people it's God, for some people it's karma, for some people it's nature, for some people it's a whole number of things. But what is it that centers you, gets you back to center, right? That re-energizes you somewhere deep down in the soul of yourself, right? And if it is God, how's that relationship going? And if it's nature, how's that going? And if it's karma, well, how's karma going for you? Whatever that might be for you, right? So I ask you that so that you have now your 4 numbers, right? So you've got these 4 numbers, and how are you going to improve each one of those areas, right? And you got to think of those 4 numbers as the legs of a table. And if they're out of balance, right, it's hard to put a plate and eat off of an out of balance table. And if they're too low and you're sitting in a normal chair, it's very difficult for you to also be able to eat correctly, right, and be healthy. So let's just work today. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to tell you something about this book and about the gentleman that I am so excited. His name is John Peitzman. He's a certified high-performance coach. He's also known as JP. He is a lifelong expert in the art of high performance, from his time as a young performing artist to his executive career spanning the globe. JP has embraced and cultivated his entrepreneurial spirit throughout his life. One of an elite team of certified high-performance coaches worldwide, JP left the corporate world in 2015 and founded In Balance with Life with his wife, Marlieza. I think I got that right. He is passionate about helping business owners and entrepreneurs and corporate teams get to the next level by teaching them the most advanced high-performance techniques available in the world so that they can turn stress, struggle, and strife into health, happiness, and harmony. And who doesn't want that? And obtain true balance in their lives. So welcome to the show, JP. Welcome to A New Direction.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jay. Really happy to be here.
Thank you. And by the way, did you know that JP and Build Framework is brought to you by our sponsors? Yes, we do have one, Inline Business Brokers and Advisors, who, by the way, represent profitably privately held companies with gross annual revenues in excess of $1 million. Inline delivers the highest market value in the shortest amount of time with complete confidentiality. That is the registered trademark. You can learn more at nline.com. That's ENLIGN.com, and also our core sponsor, Linda Craft and Team Realtors. It doesn't matter where you're at in the world. If you're looking for somebody, if you're looking to either buy or sell a home, why don't you contact her first? She can help you find the right people, or she could do it herself. Just look up Linda Craft, LINDACRAFT.com, and they're bringing you JP and the Build Framework. So, JP, I love the book. All right, this is not. I mentioned in the opening that this is not a long read, and I don't think you intended it to be a long read. But this book, though, is chock full of all sorts of yumminess. And I found that, I knew it was coming, right? When you said it was the Build Framework and you put Build in all capital letters, I knew that we were going to look at some people acrostic or acronym. I knew that we were looking at something here, and I was like going, oh, see, because you had me at the beginning when you talked about, are you in Struggleville?
Right.
And okay, listen, I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm an author. I even get in Struggleville sometimes. I mean, if people can't admit that you get into Struggleville where sometimes, it just seems like nothing's working. Right? Here I am, a high performance guy. Here I am a coach. But sometimes things are just not working. Sometimes I just have those moments. Right? Is the first part of getting out of Struggleville, before we get to Build, is the first part of it just acknowledging the fact that you struggle?
Absolutely. And realizing that everyone does, of course, right? And realizing this thing that I talk about, which is that really is where you live, right? I mean, it's not, I'm in Australia right now. You're in the States. There's people in Paris, who knows, all over the world, right, listening to this. But it's not about physically where you are. It's about mentally how you're living, right? So when we talk about Struggleville, we're talking about how you are in this moment of your life, wherever that might be. And the reason, Jay, that's so important is that once you understand that, it's kind of like a new level of accountability, right? Because it doesn't matter then where you seek to be externally, right? And there's a lot of analogies to that. But, you understand that it's really about internally what you can do or not do to get out of Struggleville. Because otherwise, what you find is that people can, I mean, think about this, listeners. I mean, everyone I'm sure can relate. At times in your life where you think, oh yeah, I'm struggling, but that's because I don't have the right relationship.
Right.
Or that's because I don't live in the house I want to live with. Actually, it's because I don't have the job I have. Actually, it's because we don't have kids, or we do have kids, or the kids aren't grown, or the kids need to be, whatever it is, right?
Right.
It's waiting for something else to get you out of that when actually it has nothing to do with the external factors. It has everything to do with how you're taking them, right? So when we talk about Struggleville, it's really important to understand that that's about inside your head, like how you are every moment of your life. And you're absolutely spot on, as they say in Australia, that everyone has those moments, right?
Sure.
But when you have the awareness that that's what's happening and that you have the accountability and ability to make a change and that you're choosing, right, in a way to be there, and most importantly, drumroll, there's a way out of Struggleville, right? Then it changes everything, because then it's a conscious choice. Then you have accountability. Then you have responsibility. You're able to choose your own response. You're able to actually get out and move out of Struggleville once and for all, regardless of those external factors.
Is this guy exciting, you folks? Because I just found myself just like really excited listening to him. Do you get why he's a high performance guy, right? Because I just feel like I got like, high octane fuel, right, in my mental emotional tank here. Okay, for me, just the opening here. And so I love that. I'm that guy, and I love that. And Struggleville is kind of interesting, isn't it? Because I think you hit on something that's really, really, really crucial, and that is when we get into Struggleville so frequently, we are looking for something outside of ourselves to get us out of Struggleville. And this is where we do make bad choices, right? This is where, we look for the relationship, or we look for sex, or we look for drugs, or we look for alcohol, because we can get into that, the danger zone. And even good things can become dangerous, but it's really not the externals, as you say. It's really a mental, emotional, maybe spiritual, and probably physical piece as well, right? To get us.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Don't set up camp in Struggleville. It's that
Right.
easy, right? If you're in Struggleville, realize you're passing through, right? And that's fine. Pass through. Find the way out. What most people do is, because they're not realizing that, they're actually in a place that they can choose to get out of, they have, these habitual patterns of mind and emotion, basically, that keep us stuck. And that's part of the pattern, right? Because we don't acknowledge the fact that we can do anything. So we set up camp. Right. I mean, our base camp is Struggleville. And then we just continually sit there and complain about everything because we've pitched a tent and we live there, right? And that's the problem, Jay, because people don't realize, look, you're there, just pass on through, right? Get out, take the accountability, take the responsibility, take that action and awareness step at a time. And there's really simple processes to be able to do this. But the first step in all of that is acknowledging that you actually are the master of your own domain, right? You decide where you live. I mean, it's so simple yet so profound, right? But every one of you right now, you're deciding what type of experience you're having right now. And someone I know is saying, no, you don't understand. I just got fired. How can I possibly? I can't. Actually, guess what? This firing, a month, 2 months, a year from now, you may look back at as the most incredible experience of your life because it led to where you're sitting then, right? And I don't say that to kind of discount, the drama and trauma around all these things, and not to have, like you said earlier, empathy and understanding that things are, sad sometimes or whatever. But this is about a process of enjoying the journey, of honoring the struggle and realizing that, hey, this too shall pass. And most likely this is on the path to my best self. And guess what? It can be, because you can decide to make this on the path to your best self because you're moving through Struggleville, not living in Struggleville.
Yeah, and we say you're like me, and I have certain phrases and cliches in my head, right? That I rely on. I just
sure,
right, because I rely on them because they're true, right? we say, I mean, how many times have we told ourselves this too shall pass? I often follow that with, so do kidney stones. It doesn't mean that's not painful on the way out. I mean, so
Right.
right. I mean, so I mean, and right. The empathy isn't that I don't. It's not that I feel sorry for you. I understand what you're going through, but I think the other side of empathy is also understanding that I do understand, but I also, because of my experiencing, haven't been through there, and probably will be there again, is to understand that you're going to be able to get through this. There is another side. It's not going to stay here. Ever. It's never going to stay here unless you allow it to stay here, and you have control over that. Right? Because it's hard. I'm not saying this is easy, but we can change our attitude. We have a choice. There's very few things that we have a choice over, but we can choose our emotional state, we can choose our effort, and we can choose our attitude. Those are choices.
Absolutely. And it's about what you want your identity to be, right? If you want to latch on to that, I mean, and in the hypothetical I just mentioned, the guy getting fired, right? I mean, that again could be, I'm off to my next thing. This is freeing me up. It's going to be, exciting times now. I can go after my dreams and all these things. I mean, that could be an identity that leads him to then more quickly that next version of his best self, right? Versus the person, same situation, who becomes the guy who got fired.
Right.
And that's, or becomes the person who lost that one relationship, or becomes the you know what I'm talking about, right?
Sure,
By the way, easier to see in other people than ourselves, of course, right?
God,
so you all know a person, but it's not you, right?
Oh, right.
But look at it at yourself, right? Look in the mirror and say, oh, what is my identity? I mean, what are these negative things that we keep repeating to ourselves that we actually form this identity of? Then, 6 months later, the guy's still talking with his buddies at the bar or pub or whatever you say, and he's the guy who got fired and can't believe how horrible that is. And then that just breeds that whole setting up base camp in Struggleville, right? So when you start to feel yourself, and it's a feeling, it's an energetic thing, right? I mean, thoughts are emotions that are electricity in the body. You feel these things. They actually have a contracting effect on the body. And as you know, because you read it, but I talk about that in the build framework too. It's about there are these emotional contractions that actually stop us from being able to do these things that make us our best selves. And when you feel those things, and meditation is a great way to do that, and just being aware of these things is a great way to do that, then you can, as you mentioned, make conscious choices to say, actually, I'm not going to repeat that framework in my mind about being that guy who was fired every day. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to even spend time doing that. I'm going to take that time, instead of calling my friends and, complaining about that, I'm going to go on another interview or whatever it is, right? Go meet another person, or not, put time into that failed relationship that's already over and it's been over for years, right? So we have mental choices, we have physical choices, we have all these choices, but until we know that we actually have those choices, it becomes just this pattern. So what we're talking about here is basically waking up and getting out of Struggleville once and for all.
Yeah, we're with John Peitzman. We call him JP. He wrote this outstanding book, The Build Framework. We haven't even got to build yet. I mean, we're going to. I promised you we will. But,
that's fine. We may not.
Yeah, Struggleville.
They can read the book.
Yeah, read the book. But Struggleville is very real for so many people. And, I know that there's so many coaches and people out there talk about momentum. And what I loved about your approach in this book was that I keep saying you can't get into momentum if you're stuck. And if you're struggling and you're stuck, I need you to just take a baby step out of that. And I love the movie What About Bob? I know it's a comedy. I get it with Dreyfuss and I get it. It's a great movie. It's a funny movie. It's a hilarious movie. But there's so much truth in neurotic Bob about taking one baby step at a time, and you just got to move in the right direction. And I'm going to write that book, by the way. I'm going to write that book, Baby Steps. I'm going to actually write it. But
I thought you meant you were going to write the book, What About Bob?
Yeah,
it's already a movie, right?
No, it was. You remember the book? It was the book Baby Steps that the psychiatrist writes, right? And so I'm like going, I'm going to write that book. I'm just going to write the book of Baby Steps. And anyway, so, but it's really true. You got to take it one small step at a time. And then as you take the small steps, then we can start talking about momentum. But when you're in Struggleville, taking that first step is difficult. right? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's hard to take that first step.
And remember, that first step is just being aware of it. That's
Right.
really a huge step. I mean, that's kind of the quantum shift right there, because then you now have the ability to make a difference. Up until that point, this whole thing about you don't know, right?
Right,
and
right.
in that case, there's nothing you can do because you're just kind of in this boat floating down the stream with no directional capacity whatsoever, right?
Right. It's so true. Okay, so by the way, John Peitzman, the author of this book called The Build Framework, he's also a certified high performance coach. He's one of the few, by the way. It's kind of like being the sommelier of coaches, all right? If you're a master sommelier, there's not that many of them. There's not that many certified high performance coaches. It happens to be that John, or JP, is one of them. And so he's like the sommelier, master sommelier of coaching, all right? So it's really kind of cool. To listen.
I love that term. I might put that on my business
Yeah,
card
would you
now.
do that? The master sommelier of coaching, and you could just say I gave that to you, right? Because that's really what it is. I mean, if you're a certified high performance coach, you've become a master sommelier of coaching. That's all it is. So maybe they'll do a movie about you, right? They'll call it Somm coaching, right? Because
You never know.
You never know. It might happen. So the build framework, and I want to get into that because I found it fascinating. And I found it also to be really true because each letter of build stands for a different piece. But you said in the book at the beginning, this idea of build, and it does start with building relationships. By the way, that's the B. I'm going to give you that one.
There's the teaser.
Yeah, there's the teaser, but is the B part of it. But it's a centrifugal loop. Right? Did I get that right? Centrifugal loop?
Yep, centrifugal looping. You got it.
Right, because explain why it's why this whole process of build is a centrifugal loop.
Yeah, well, I think that it may be good just to give them the rest of the letters, if I may, so then they can understand that.
Okay, all right, yeah, go ahead.
Unless you wanted to tease that out.
No.
Let's
Not do that. I don't want to make him that angry. Let's go ahead and do
That's
that.
right. Okay, so let's just start with build, right? So build is, as Jay mentioned, an acronym, right? I'm Mr. Acronym, but so B, as he already stated, stands for build relationships, right? So U is understand the business. I is for implement strategies. L is for lead and inspire. And D is for deliver excellence. So this allows you to understand the acronym of build, right? And what Jay was talking about there with centrifugal looping, and this is what's so important about build, is that literally each one, pun intended, builds on the one before, right? So here's the best way for your listeners, I think, to understand this, Jay. It's kind of a reverse engineering exercise. So think about either someone or yourself, which is great, when you've been successful in something, like you're really successful in this thing. So actually, Jay, let's do this right now. So pick a thing. I mean, it can be this show, right? It can be something,
Sure.
or it can be a book that you wrote, right? So are you thinking about one of those things? What's a thing you're thinking about that you've been successful about?
I'm thinking about this show because the show is
Okay, this show.
Yeah.
Okay. So think about this show, and now you can do this going forward, and that's the whole point, and that's how you do it. But we're going to do it going backwards to explain what centrifugal looping is all about.
All
so
right.
now you're delivering excellence in this show, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, absolutely. So would you say that you're leading and inspiring in what you do?
Absolutely. I no
Okay.
doubt.
Right. Now, is that leading and inspiring that you were able to do as you think about how you actually came to this point of delivering excellence? Was that based upon or not based upon implementing the right strategies?
Oh, you have no idea how many strategies I had to go through to find the right strategy, but it's true. Yeah.
But once you implemented the right strategies, that allowed you to lead and inspire,
Absolutely,
right?
no
and
doubt.
inspire,
No
which
doubt.
then allowed you to deliver excellence, correct?
That's absolutely true.
Okay, now check this out. The strategies, and it's funny that because we all do, it's like, yeah, we did a lot of failed strategies.
Right,
That's why I say the right strategies, right?
Right.
But the right ones were, guess what? Based upon, and by the way, we haven't talked about this, right? I mean, this is the first time we're talking, right?
We
But
haven't.
this works like 100% of the time. That's what's so cool about build, just quickly as a side note, is that even people who don't understand it and haven't done it proactively with understanding how to actually put it in practice and in place in their lives, if you talk to them about their success, they've actually figured out how to implement build in their own way, and that's what's led them to success, right? They kind of lucked into it, right? So they're doing this. I have a show on YouTube, The Build Show with JP, where I talk to all these successful people who, a lot of them have read the book and been coached by me and all of that, but a lot of them, they come on and they go, oh my God, this is, if I only had this years ago, I wouldn't have had to take all this time, right? So back to the centrifugal looping, those strategies that you implemented, the right ones, were they based upon you just trying to figure it out, or were the right ones based upon your understanding of the business?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so full disclosure. I probably listened to more and read more about how to podcast, what's the right thing to podcast, learning about the business of podcasting and radio shows, and just doing so many interviews and just working on the skills and those type of things. I probably did more work than people can imagine of understanding this business. Because this
exactly.
I can't tell people how much stuff. I mean, if you were to look at my Kindle on all the stuff I have on radio and podcasting, you can't believe the books I read prior to this. I mean, with a ton just to understand the business.
And that in-depth understanding led you to ultimately implement the right strategies, correct?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which then led to leading and inspiring, which leads to delivering excellence. And here's
the
kicker.
You're killing
right?
me. Okay.
Here's here's the kicker, which goes back to the very beginning. Now that, and again, we're reverse engineering it, right? And we'll show you how to go forward with this first. But it's really cool how this works, like in hindsight, right? So now you understand the business, and you took that in-depth understanding of the business to implement the right strategies. But let me ask you this: the strategies that you implemented that were based upon the understanding of the business.
Right.
That understanding of the business that you really understood, was that from just those many, many books that you read and Google searches that you did and YouTube videos that you watched and blogs that you had? Or, you know where I'm going with this, was it based upon relationships that you formed and built and fostered and nurtured that then led you towards the actual depth of understanding of the business?
Okay.
And that's called a leading question, but I think I know where the answer is going.
Full closure. Okay, that's crazy. So full disclosure, the show got started because I was doing a segment on a national syndicated radio program called the Jiggy Jaguar Experience. And I actually had I'm a weekly guest on Jiggy's show. Okay, so I had my own segment called the Internet Doctor segment. And then matter of fact, I'm co-hosting with him again after this show because he asked me to come on and co-host with him. And I was co-hosting with him weekly. And we became great friends. Well, in order to get to James, Jiggy Jaguar, my publicist, Richard Kuritz, introduced me to James because I became friends with Richard through his son, Jared, who I met at a book publishers conference several years ago and really liked him. And all of a sudden, dude, that's crazy.
And then you understood the business better, right?
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Oh my gosh, JP, that's just nuts.
In hindsight, it's like this magic sauce, right? So here's the deal for your listeners who haven't read the book yet or taken the course or seen the show or all these things. If we go forward now, again, just talking about centrifugal looping because that's the point, let me spell it out this way too because this is really how centrifugal looping works. It means that you just don't go BUILD. So now we're going to go forward, right? So say that you have a dream, a desire, something that you want to do, right? So everything starts with, we're going to go forward now instead of backwards in hindsight, building relationships, right? So you build the right relationships so that you can understand the business. So B leads to U. But here is where centrifugal looping comes in. Instead of going, Jay, just now onto I, after you, right, understand the business, you go back to B. So what that means is that you understand the business now based upon those relationships, but now you ask yourself, okay, what relationships do I have that I need to foster to actually understand the business even deeper, right? What relationships do I need to start, right? I mean, I have one client who's like, okay, write down, you understand the business now, right? So what does that mean? Okay, now I understand what I don't know. I don't know anything about marketing. Okay, great. Let's do a centrifugal loop. Go back to B. It's kind of a trick question, right? Everyone can get the answer to this. If I don't understand marketing and I'm centrifugal looping back to B, what relationship do I need to build, right, to understand the business better now that I know what I don't know? Well, the answer is, my friends, someone in marketing, right? So then they were like, yeah, I need to. And so there's a way to do that, social networking, just figure out that relationship. So then guess what? Now they understand the business even better because they built that relationship in that particular niche that they needed to explore. And the same goes true then when you then centrifugal loop into I. You implement the right strategies. You don't just go right to leading and inspiring because that's not the best methodology to actually get you to delivering excellence. What you do in implementing strategies is that you learn from that, and upon implementing strategies, and as you said, we all, knock some up and knock them down, or set them up and knock them down, and then some don't go down, and we have all these missteps and things like that when we're exploring and trying things. So then you centrifugal loop all the way back to B again. So after implementing strategies, you go, okay, well, based upon that experience, what relationships do I need to focus on, right? Start, create, foster, right? And then, by the way, that goes to you again. So, and based upon that, what's the depth of understanding even deeper that I'm understanding the business? Now I can implement even more sound strategies. And that, my friends, is how you can lead and inspire, because no one else is doing this. They're just trying to lead and inspire because they saw someone say that if you do a post every day, you're leading and inspiring. Right? Right. It's like everyone's out there trying to do these things, but they're not centrifugal looping to ensure that they go deep and they go to the heart and they understand these things. And when all those things come together, that's when you're truly delivering excellence from the heart. And that's what centrifugal looping is all about.
Okay, hold it here, folks. My mind just went poof, blown. I got to tell you, when he walked me backwards through this whole thing, I can't describe the feeling that I had, but every time he went backwards from D back to B, that when he was doing that with me on the show, I was like, oh my gosh, I accidentally did this and didn't even realize I was doing this. But that's the reason why it's successful, because other things that I've done that haven't been as successful is because I jumped in to like trying to understand the business without trying to bring a relationship involved. And I'm like going, it makes so much sense, or I tried to implement a strategy without really understanding the business. And so I've jumped in the middle somewhere. Or like you said, we can become a thought leader on Twitter, thinking that that's the way to the business. But at the end of the day, you start with the relationship, and then you go to then you try to understand the business. But then you got to go back through the relationship cycle to get the understanding a little bit deeper, and then you can kind of, dude, you blew my mind. I'm just telling you right now, you blew you blew
well, and the thing is, it's so simplistic, right, and straightforward. It's not hard work. And I mean, if you really want your mind blown, here's the kicker, and that is, as cool as all of that is, and it's amazing, the real understanding of how this can transform your life is when you understand that it's not just about the centrifugal looping and all those different areas. It's about understanding balance and integration across all of those areas, whether this is in your personal life or your professional life, whether it's for you individually or for you running a team, right? It's ensuring that you have the right time allocation and deliverable execution in each of those areas. Because, Jay, what happens so many times, and I coach people like this all the time until we implement this, and they're in Struggleville. Why? Because they have overwhelm. Why? Because they're consumed by one of these, right? They're consumed by trying to lead and inspire at the degradation of relationships, right? Or they're just focused on relationships and they're not implementing strategies. Or people are just consumed 24/7 by trying to implement strategies and they're forgetting that they need time to actually go understand the business, right? So all of this stuff is about balance. And each person's balance is potentially different, right? Each employee's, if you're leading a team, they might have different time allocations that they spend. But the point is this: everyone, personally, professionally, teams, individuals, you need to spend time and understand what the most important aspects are in each of these 5 areas. Because if you don't, you will stay in Struggleville. And that's really the point of balance across all of these areas, because then you're not in overwhelm. You know that, there's that thing that I need to do, but that's in the I. That's implement strategy. So today, I'm not even thinking about that. That's my Wednesday, right? For example, right? Today, I'm just fostering relationships. And you're okay with that, because you're not struggling, because you're not feeling overwhelmed, because you know that will have a place, because you have what? A framework that allows everything to have its proper place, and you know that you will get to it and you will move everything forward in harmony.
That's beautiful. We're talking to John Peitzman, JP. The book is called Build Framework. Let me say to you right now, who are watching, listening, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening, buy the book. I'm just telling you, buy the book. Listen to this podcast 100 billion times, but buy this book. The book is called Build Framework. It is a great book. Amazon, check out your bookstore. If they don't have it on the shelf, tell them, why do you not have Build Framework on the shelf? And put it on there because it's that good. That's what I want you to do. I want you to just go everywhere that you can and say, put this on. Because I'm telling you, the book is not all that. The book is not it's not a long read. You're going to be able to do this in a sitting, which was intentional. But it's so chock full of information. It's going to be helpful not only to your business, not only if you're in teams, this is going to be great for your team, but this is going to be helpful for you individually. As people will tell you, right? I mean, you're going through the same problem over and over again. Guess what? The lowest common denominator is you. Okay? just going to be really honest with you. You can blame everybody else, but actually the lowest common denominator is always you. If you're going through the same issues over and over again, this book will help you break free of that issue personally, but also break free of the same thing that you do in your business, because we end up doing the same thing in our business all the time. And then we wonder why we're not getting a different result. That's the insanity. The Build Framework will help you get out of that crazy business insanity. And JP and his book is brought to you today by our sponsors at Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. They have literally helped thousands of people and the clients in the sale and purchase of businesses. When it's time to sell your business, contact the professionals at Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. They will deliver the highest market value in the shortest amount of time with complete confidentiality. I know these people personally. I'm just telling you, these are internationally known business brokers and advisors. They can help you both on the buy and the sell side, and they're going to do all of this with complete confidentiality. That is their trademark, and you can find them at enlign.com. And I also want to do, as we're at the bottom here, before we get back with JP, is also tell you about the T-shirt shout out of the week. The T-shirt shout out of the week is the Stockyard Cafe in Wahoo, Nebraska, and it's because Nebraska is going through so much right now, folks, in terms of the snow. They're in the middle of a cyclone. There's still so much snow in the middle of calving season out there, and the flooding and the ice chunks, and so much is being destroyed out in the heartland of this country. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, right, and shout out to all my friends out there in Wahoo, Nebraska, and all over Nebraska. Listen, Samaritan's Purse is out there, and they could always use your donation. So why don't you just go to SamaritansPurse.org. They're not paying me for this. I'm just doing this because this is the place where I was raised. And so I'm just asking you to support those folks because they need your help. They really do. And so check out Samaritan's Purse. People are without homes. People have lost their livelihoods. Cattle farmers, regular farmers, have lost their livelihoods as a result of all this out there. So Samaritan's Purse, please. SamaritansPurse.org. Help them out as well. And also a special thank you to Linda Craft and Team Realtors. If you're looking to buy or sell your home, or you're looking to find a place anywhere in the world, start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. They are a real team to help you with the largest personal purchase you'll probably make in your life. And you can find them at lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And they are all bringing you John Peitzman. I want to just call him JP, but it's really John Peitzman and his book, The Build Framework. So JP, let's dig back in here. And I think I wrote on a Facebook post this week, there's so much talk about artificial intelligence. And I said the one thing that artificial intelligence will never do is have an authentic relationship with another human being. And the reason why that is because as humans go, there is an emotional, mental, spiritual connection between people that can't be reproduced by a machine. And you went into length in this book somewhat on getting people to understand the importance of authenticity in the relationship versus just trying to make the relationship for the purpose of gain. Talk about that.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely, as they say again, spot on with the way technology is driving things and automation and all these things. I think one of the most sought after commodities out there probably now, but certainly in the future, is what we're calling emotional intelligence, right?
Great.
And that ability to actually connect one-on-one. And you see it even nowadays with people so consumed with technology, and these devices that were meant to, I think, connect us more, are actually in a lot of cases disconnecting us a lot more than they are connecting us, right?
So true.
And to the extent where people are not actually able to have those authentic relationships because they don't have the skills to actually, be authentic. And it's not that they're trying to be, disauthentic, if that's even a word, but they're not actually able to actually connect with their heart, which is why, it's not lost on you, I know, but the subtitle of the book is A Heart-Based System for Personal and Professional Growth, right? Which is about, Jay, coming back to the heart. And it's exactly that thing that you talked about being authentic, right? And I talk about in the book for each of the categories, right? For the B, the U, the I, the L, the D, there are these things called success attributes, right? And emotional contractions, right? So the success attributes are the things that allow us to actually open up and connect with the heart. For example, since you asked about it with build relationships, right? That's about the heart connection of being authentic and actually being in your heart. And it's also about being patient and relating, right? And having patience to understand that it's important to actually relate to other people in an authentic way, right?
Right.
What does that mean? Practically, that means put down the phone, right? Actually connect. Look at someone's eyes. Imagine that, right? Connect with them from the heart. Talk to them. Listen more than you're wanting to just tell them how they need to buy your product or service or date you or whatever, because that's not the point. The point is to connect, and you do that by listening, right? For understanding the business, that's about being curious, right? It's about nurturing your learning and all these things, right? And I'm not going to go through all of them, but that, in the book, you can understand that this is a very practical, tangible, tactical understanding of how we can foster these areas of our lives to actually connect with the heart. And also, we understand how we block that. Right? So when we look at the emotional contractions, for example, build relationships, right? Those are fear and guilt. Well, what does that mean? That means when I operate out of fear or guilt, when I have those, contracting emotions, they stop me literally, energetically, from being able to effectively build relationships.
Right.
So the reason that's so important to understand experientially is that when you're starting to feel that fear or that guilt in that, connection with someone, you can go, wait a second. I have the choice, like we talked about at the beginning of the call, to turn this around, to not go down that rabbit hole, right? And I can actually embrace the success attributes of patience and relating, right? And realize that I'm feeling that fear and guilt, but actually I can turn that around. Well, how can I turn around the guilt? Well, maybe talk about that thing that you're guilty about and shine the light on the shadow, basically, right? And then it goes away. And then, boom, you're able to be authentic and connect with the heart for building relationships. And now that lays the strong foundation for then you to be able to understand the business and so on and so on. So all of these things, are very kind of not out there. They're actually very tactical, right? But I think that people think, oh, yeah, that's out there kind of soft skills, warm and fuzzy things, that's not real. But actually, to your point, it needs to be real because it's becoming so unreal for most people's experience of this life that it's actually taking their experience of this life away from them and turning it into something else, right? So when we connect more to the heart, we're connecting more to feeling. Look, most of us get taught to think, right? We don't get taught to feel. And we analyze our lives and we think about our lives. We don't feel and experience our lives. And when your attention is in your head and technology and all these things, you're just analyzing and thinking about your life. You're becoming like that machine that you talked about, right? When you connect to the heart, you're feeling and experiencing your life. And when your center of gravity shifts from the head to the heart, it changes your life.
So true. And I will say this. I really do believe this is where, when we start talking about the heart, and I firmly believe this, that it is a combination of both emotion and spiritual. I think there's a spiritual emotional thing there. I'm not trying to get weird on anybody. It's just that there's something so much deeper that happens in that connection than just the feeling. I just know that there's something deeper that connected with that I can't always put my finger on. And listen, I have my master's in doctoral work were in psychology and science, and listen, I'm a science guy, but I know that when I am, even this conversation that I'm having with you right now, even though we've never met face to face and we're connecting and we're going deep here, does it feel good? Yes. There's a lot of, but I also know that there's something deeper because I'm connecting with something I can't quite explain that's deep down in there that I can't even explain it.
But people feel it. You're right, and it's an energetic thing. I mean, it's true. I mean, and this is proven scientifically from the standpoint of the heart. Right, the electrons and magnetism within the heart are stronger than the brain. Right, I mean that's where our connection is. So it's a very tangible, tactical, scientifically based understanding that our connection to each other, to ourselves, to the great awareness, to God, to Allah, to Buddha, to nature, to whatever, fill in the blank, right? This isn't a religious conversation. It's about what you talked about earlier, that connection to something greater than ourselves, that connection to each other, that connection to that you feel. You can't even put words. It's almost nonverbal, right? But when you feel it, and you're right, you can feel it in this call when we're talking about these things, and you go, oh yeah, that resonates with me. And if it's not this call, think about in your life when you are talking to someone, or you see that sunset or whatever, and you feel that, and it's nonverbal. That's what we're talking about. And that, Jay, can be a new baseline. I mean, imagine if you wake up every day and that's your baseline that you start your day off in, and you can actually summons that not once every couple months or once a year or a memory you have as a child at Christmas, but the feeling that you actually step into to be your best self. And that's what we're talking about being able to do when, again, we shift our attention, our center of gravity, from living more in the head in Struggleville and living more in the heart, in openness, in expansion, and all of the things we're talking about, and feeling and experiencing our lives from the heart.
Yeah, and I this is how I phrase it, because I can't put a finger necessarily on it. I just say I know that I know that I know. I mean that's kind of how it's like I can't give you that there's a particular emotion attached to it. Honestly, yes, there are emotions, but beyond it, I just know that I know that I know, and I think that's and I think everybody can kind of relate to it, where they're developing this relationship, and you're developing a relationship with someone, and you just know that you know that you know. You can't, you feel these things, but you just can't. There's that other thing there that just goes, it's right. This is absolutely right, and by the way, it's real and it's authentic and it's not cheapened and it's not any of this. It's just something that you know, and I will take that a step further in an opposite way. And this true story, this just happened to me just less than 10 days ago. LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. People know I've written books on social media and all sorts of things, and I love LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite places to go because I can connect LinkedIn to my Twitter account and let them both fly at the same time. But I had somebody connect with me, and they introduced themselves, and I accept them because I accept most people. And here we are having the private conversation on LinkedIn, and literally, he literally asked me, when can we have a 5-minute phone call? And I was like, whoa. I don't even know you that well to want to have a 5-minute phone call with you. Right? And I said, look, the way I do things is I develop relationships with people. I don't just try to get a feeler out in 5 minutes. And it felt wrong, right? I just knew it felt wrong. And it wasn't the right thing because I knew that for me, I got to build an authentic relationship. Now, it's harder for me to put a finger on when it's right, but I know absolutely when it's wrong. Is that common?
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking about, being in the flow, basically. So if this isn't resonating with anyone, use the sports analogy, right? Like Michael Jordan, whoever your, guy is or gal is. It's like when they're in the zone, right? They're not thinking about the next step, they're just in the zone, right? So your life can be in flow too, where you can just, people are struggling a lot when they're in Struggleville with decisions. It's like, oh, do I do this? Do I do that? Is it this person? Is it right? But actually, like you said, when I know, right? It's a feeling. And that, look, it's actually, how amazing is it? Think about it, listeners. There's a time out there, I'm sure you can recall, when it wasn't really a choice. Right? There were lots of choices out there, but it really wasn't a choice because you knew the right answer. You knew
Right.
that actually this is the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to move, or I'm going to buy this house, or it doesn't have to be that big. I'm going to have this for lunch, right?
Right.
Versus that. It's whatever it is, because your body knows, and you trust your heart, and you go into that flow. And the more you connect with the heart, Jay, the more you're in that flow where everything just is right, and you know, and you're going through this path. Now, to your question, yes, absolutely. When you're connected to that, not only do you know what's right and what's going, but by default, then these other things, right? That Twinkie for lunch isn't appealing because you know, you might not know that you need the salad, but you know you don't want the Twinkie, right? But it's that same thing, and trust that feeling, trust it, like go with that, like that didn't seem right. Now it could have, by the way, nothing against that scenario. It could be that it did feel right? You connect with someone and they want to have a call, and let's have a call because it's true and it's authentic. Now I will tell you again, I don't know the situation. It's the first time I heard it. We didn't have this conversation before, but I will tell you that I'd bet anything on the fact that it was not authentic, and that was probably a strategy that he had read or she had read somewhere that said, okay, message 3 times and then say 5-minute phone call and then get them on the phone call and then sell them the thing or then whatever, send them the free PDF, whatever. But it wasn't authentic. And guess what? The reason I can say that with such authority is that you felt it, right? Yeah. And you knew that it wasn't right. So those types of and this, by the way, it ties right to build, because that's implementing a strategy, but it's not implementing the right strategy. Why? Because it's not based upon a true understanding of the business, based upon relationships.
Right.
That's an example of implementing a strategy that's just something that someone read and thought, oh, this will be good. It's just a numbers game. I'll do LinkedIn. I'll get 5-minute phone calls. And by the way, might that lead to a couple sales? Or yeah, sure. That's why there's probably a book out there on doing something like that. But the point is, to what avail, right? I mean, what does that really result in? So what? It works, right? But it's not really working,
right? Because
how does that feel for that person? How are they really servicing their clients? How are they connecting? They're not, right? So it's a quick win. It's not actually authentic, and it's not building that long-term success, even for that individual. Because that individual, I can guarantee you, because I coach people like that, who are out there trying, and by the way, they're trying to do their best. They're just not connected to their heart, and because of that, they're not actually in service to their hearts, and they're chasing the dollar instead of chasing being of service, right? And when you shift that, guess what? The dollars come. It's an amazing thing, right? Because you're following, again, your heart, and you're making the right choices. So, yes, you're right. When you're in that flow, things are easy, and you're just going with life. And you're not – here's the key. You're not struggling with or arguing with the present moment, right? Because you know, look, this is what it is. And you feel from your heart what feels right to do. So if it's going this way, or if it's not, having a call with this person, or you just trust that and you stay on your path. The problem most people have is that when they alter off of their path to follow someone else's feeling, even though they know it doesn't feel right to them. Look, you'll never go wrong trusting your heart, staying on your path. People may come on your path, people may go, people may, all these things. But if you're on your path with your heart, walking your life to be in service to others, guess what? That's your best path. And sometimes people come and stay for the rest of your life, right? So it's not that you're going to, lose everyone or have these things. But the point is, trust that feeling. And you trust that feeling by getting to know that feeling. And you get to know that feeling by connecting to your heart. And you connect to your heart by being able to be still through meditation, through practices, through things like the Build framework that allow you to actually have a framework that gets you there day in and day out.
We're talking with John Peitzman. We call him JP on the show, and I might even call him John. He wrote this outstanding book called The Build Framework, a heart-based system for personal and professional growth. It's not only it's a literally sit down and read through it. But here's the thing about the book: not only will you sit down and read through it, you're going to want to read through it again and again and again and again. And what he did with me, for those of you who are joining us a little later in the show, you got to go back and listen to what he did with me and how the success of this podcast and radio show, you're going to have to check out how he worked his way backwards in Build, because we're kind of stuck here on the B, building relationships, and we got a little bit into understanding the business part of it, and we haven't really talked about implementing a strategy very much, and leading and inspiring. Well, we're not going to get to that today, and I can already tell you that delivering excellence, which is what our goal really ultimately is, right? At least for me, is everything I do is delivering. We're not going to talk about that either, but you can find it out in the book. It's called The Build Framework. And you can do that. And John, JP, is brought to us today by Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. Literally, these folks are the business selling folks and advising folks. Selling a business is serious business. So you know what they say, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. When it's time to sell your business, contact the professionals at Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. I know that that's not a very popular commercial, but it's what they wrote for me. And you can find more about Inline at enlign.com, and also brought to you by Linda Craft and Team Realtors. When you're ready to buy or sell your home anywhere in the world, you need a referral, just contact the folks at Linda Craft and Team Realtors. That's LINDACRAFT.com, and they're bringing us John and JP and his book, The Build Framework. So I think what happens to so many of us, John, is that we take for granted sometimes that we have enough relationships. But that's really not true. We can have a lot of relationships, but you may not have the right relationships to build your business. You may not have the right relationships to understand your business to move on, or having enough relationships to actually not just understand, but being able to integrate, or having enough relationships because, as you point out, if nobody's following you, who are you leading? And so you can't lead and inspire if nobody's following you at all. And delivering excellence, and that's further down the road. But I don't think we invest. I think we invest time in building these authentic relationships, but I don't know that we really do.
I think you're right. And I think, it's such a cliche, but it's so true. It's not really about the quantity. It's about the quality, right? So, it's not counting Facebook friends. Right? Oh yeah, I'm building relationships. I'm up to 5,000. I can't even build anymore because I can't, I've reached my limit. This is, really, look at those. How many people are you actually, how many people do you even know, right? In that kind of context of Facebook or whatever. And again, it's about that quality of investment in an authentic way. So you want to go out there and be of service. You want to go out there and, ultimately, are you, making relationships that might benefit you for understanding the business and all these things? Yeah, but you're doing that from the heart. You're doing that in a way where you can be of service, right? And a good thing to remember, too, I was interviewing some guests on my show, The Build Show, which is out there on YouTube with Carly and Tresnay, which are some celebrities here in Australia.
Plug the show. How can people find the show? Go ahead, plug it.
Oh, sorry. So my show is The Build Show with JP. So just go to YouTube and search my name, John Peitzman, or The Build Show. And basically what we do there, Jay, is we walk, like I just did kind of briefly with you, we walk through the build framework with guests who have actually implemented this in their lives, right? But the reason I mentioned it is we just taped this show recently, and these celebrities that are known in Australia, anyway, maybe globally, but I know they're known in Australia, Carly and Tresnay, they were talking about relationships, and they were talking about this thing, and it's not their thing or my thing, but it's a thing out there where you're the sum of, I think, the 5 people who are closest to you, right? So look at that, right? Yeah. But their point was really interesting, which is that's not necessarily about the 5 people who you are actually, spending time with personally. It's about those relationships. And the same thing is true with build here. When we're talking about building relationships, it's, you want it to be authentic, but remember those people, you, Jay, probably are one of the 5 individuals that some of the listeners spend most of their time with, right? So, Absolutely. And you might not even know them. So there's a relationship there where they're spending time getting insights and inspiration from you, and that's how they're spending their time, right? So the point there is to not just look at your circle of, where you hang out at around the kitchen table or whatever, but also how you're spending your time in relationships, right? Who you're, listen to this. It's like, who are you listening to? Who influences you, right, in a way that's actually going to drive you towards success, or the opposite, who influences you in a way that actually keeps you in Struggleville. So when you look at that, then you think about the 5 people who you spend most of your investment in, right? And that's not to discount the fact that you should have authentic, real relationships where you're actually going out, for a coffee or a drink or whatever, or lunch or a banana, whatever it is, and having that conversation. But it just kind of puts a new light on it where you realize how you're spending your time with relationships, right? And how you're spending your time in actually getting that inspiration and noting that can be someone like yourself, right? That people tune into every day, every week, whenever the show is on, so that they can actually have that authentic connection to become their better selves. And that's the point when you look at the 5 people who are most influential around you and that you're spending time with. And then when you think about that more, then you kind of marry that into how you're spending your time making choices about who you want to then authentically build relationships with in your day-to-day life.
That's awesome. John, do you have a couple minutes still, or do you have a hard cutoff?
No, I'm fine. It's only 6 a.m. here in Australia, so I get all the time in the world, right?
It's 6. Okay, so John is in Australia right now as I'm talking to you, and it's 6 a.m. in the morning, as you heard. And it's I mean, the donut shops are just opening right now. So, I mean, if they have donuts in Australia, I don't know. I'm guessing they have donuts in Australia.
They have really good coffee shops.
Right, great coffee shops, right? So,
that's right.
So hopefully he's been sipping on a cup of coffee. I try to give moments where the guests can get a drink of water. That's why I talk occasionally. So they get a drink of water, a sip of coffee, and John's.
I have my water. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, you have your water. So I love this book. All right, I'm completely authentic when I say I really did love this book because I love the simplicity of the book. But it's not just the simplicity, it's the fact that this book starts out in the right way, and that is it's about people at the end of the day. It really is about people. And I want you as a business owner and as a business leader or as a CEO or as a manager or even as somebody who is pushing a broom and you're listening to this podcast with John and I want you to understand that where you are right now doesn't have to stay there. And the relationships that you do develop do change you. I'm being honest with you. Relationships change you, and John makes this point in this book, and that as you develop your relationships and as you go deeper, they change us in a way that moves us to another place. And as you develop the right relationships, this is where you can start to understand your business, implement your strategies, lead and inspire and develop excellence. And I hope you're really hearing that. I know we spent literally the whole hour. I can't believe it's been an hour already because it's been going so fast and I've enjoyed it. But literally the relationship piece is just so incredibly important, and hopefully you got that down. And for those of you who are introverts, by the way, and now here comes the psychological professional in me. For those of you who are introverts, by the way, I want to just tell you something. You can develop relationships. It's a choice. Okay, you don't have to be extroverts like John and I, because clearly you can hear John as an extrovert and I'm an extrovert. You don't have to be an extrovert to develop relationships. You can do it privately, one person at a time, and you're probably pretty darn good at it. So don't let that inhibit you either, because it becomes an excuse. But it's a choice. You can develop relationships. And I think anybody, I notice like that there's so many people who are watching the show live and that listen in, and all these people are friends, certainly. And I'm watching one guy, Buddy West, who I know well out of Delaware, and he's the king of building relationships, and he's an amazing, successful real estate professional, and it's really based on his relationships, and I think that's so important. I do want you to just spend a little time, though, if you would, please. If you'd spend just a little time, because people do not understand really the next step in this process, and that is really understanding their business. Let's talk about that just for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so important to, again, build relationships. Everything's based upon that. But understanding the business is really taking the relationships that you have and then looking at what is your business really about, right? And by the way, as we've talked about this whole hour, and I can't believe it's been an hour either. It's like gone in a blink, right? But it's a heart-based system for personal and professional growth. So your business might be the business of your family, right? The business of your marriage. Imagine that, right? I mean, I have so many executives we work with sometimes, and they'll tell me, look, my relationship is the most important thing. My family, absolutely, but let's focus on this thing. I'm like, hang on, your family is your most important, right? Okay, so show me your calendar, right? We call it a diary here in Australia. Show me your scheduling device, right?
Right.
And we look at it, and guess what? All these business meetings, all these updates about metrics and key performance indicators, right? KPIs and all this business jargon and stuff on their calendar. And I'm like, your relationship, your family is the most important? Yeah, that's what you said. So where is that on your calendar?
Ouch.
And
Owie.
they're like,
Owie.
oh, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you got all this stuff, right? And you're telling me that's the most important. And by the way, you're coming to me because it's not balanced, right? And you're feeling like it's falling apart at home. Well, look at your calendar. Where's date night? Where's dinner time with the kids? Where are these things? You have, an update for one of your managers here, from this time to, it's like, and the light bulb goes up. You're right. It's like, ouch, but it's also like, oh my gosh,
right.
What is my business, or what are my, things that I need to understand in my personal life as well as the professional life. Now, if you just look at the standard corporate context too, you can do the same thing, but looking at understanding, what are the things that I need to actually know, right? What are the important elements to actually track and measure, which then lead to, in that centrifugal loop, the implementing the right strategies, right? Because if we don't take the time, Jay, to actually look at what it is we're actually doing, what's your service statement, right?
Right.
Can you actually say, I help business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate teams get to the next level by teaching them the most advanced high-performance techniques available in the world so that they can obtain true balance in their lives. If you can't say that in an elevator going up, and by the way, you don't just recite it like that. You say that in an authentic way, right. so you know what it is, but you know who you help, how you help them, why you help them do that. And so many people, Jay, don't even know that for their business. Right. They're like, well, I do this, I do a little bit of that. I kind of go after this crowd. I can help anyone, and I can help them do anything. And then I weave baskets too. And oh, by the way, I'm writing a book, and whatever. It's like you don't quantify it, right? So it's so important. And we talk about this in the Build framework to understand what it is you need to understand. Understand what it is you don't know, right? Understand, how these things work together.
Yeah, I wanted to say, because, you make a big point of know what you don't know, right? And right, because I've always heard the statement of, you don't know what you do. The most dangerous people in the world are the people who don't know what they don't know.
Right. And I make a whole point. You're right. Exactly. To understand what that is so you can ask the right questions. Right. And, we talked about these heart connections, right? Like with Build relationships, the heart connection is be authentic. With understanding the business, the heart connection is be curious. So what does that mean? That means when you have that curiosity and you actually accept the fact that I don't know this thing, then go after it and learn it, because you're going to learn it and be able to digest it when you're authentically curious about it. Not when you're thinking, oh, well, I shouldn't ask that question. I'll look stupid, right? And then a year later, you still don't know about social media or whatever it is, right? It's like, understand that business. If that's your kind of weak point, then go and be curious about it. And keep, there's an ancient Zen quote that talks about, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the master's, there are few. Always keep the beginner's mind. Right. So that's talking about, that beginner, right? We're always, what is it? We're searching. When you think you know everything, and that's the other, kind of side of the coin of, know what you don't know. It's like when you think you know everything, then you're shutting yourself off because you have that kind of master's mind. Oh, no, I know that. I'm all, I don't need to learn anymore. And guess what? You're not curious anymore. And basically you're shutting the door to learning, and then you don't even know you don't know, right? So really it's keeping that beginner's mind. It's understanding the business and knowing what you don't know, to your point, and then going after filling that void. That could be hiring people. You don't have to be an expert in everything, but know that that's your weak spot. Maybe you don't want to know social marketing, right? But maybe it's important for your business to understand it. So then maybe you hire someone that's what they're going to, handle, and then they're going to report to you. Or there's lots of ways to solve the issue, right? But the point is, don't bury your head in the sand. And the bigger point is understand how this applies not just to the business, but to your personal life too, back to my family example, because without that, who cares, right? If you don't have the understanding of your life, then nothing else matters.
Yeah, we're talking to John Peitzman, author of this book called The Build Framework, a heart-based system for personal and professional growth. And we're going overtime with John because, well, he said I could. So I'm going to take advantage of it. And so I'm going to take advantage of it without wearing him out too much. And we're talking about understanding the business. And, I was I was as I was reading the book and as we went through it earlier, and I was thinking about understanding a business. One of the things that can fly in the face of understanding your business is that all of a sudden pride gets in the way, where you start to go, well, I got this, right? And I think one of the things that, especially with the podcasting, I don't know how you are with I'm sure you're like this with your show, but I always feel like there's just so much I just don't know. I feel like yeah, I'm good at this, yes, but I can always be better. It seems to me like there's endless knowledge that I have to, but I know so many people, and I've been this person, John. I'm gonna be completely vulnerable here. I have been this person that goes, you know what, I don't need to go and listen to that, or I don't need to go and learn that because I got it, right? It's not helpful. And there's a real danger when our pride gets in the way, because it's going to inhibit us from really getting to always be on the path to understanding your business.
Absolutely. And that's part of that beginner's mind we talked about, right? To always keep that. And full disclosure here too, I have been that guy as well, right? Yeah. So much so in high performance coaching we have different words very similar to I think some of the stuff that you do, but that keep us mindful of our best selves in different categories of our lives, right? So part of that is our success markers, we call them, right? So usually you have 3, but I actually added a 4th because I had confident, disciplined, creative. So that means to be successful, that's what I have to be. So I remind myself every time I go into that type of context of being successful business wise, I know that I'm going to be confident, disciplined, and creative. But guess what? I added a while back collaborative.
Got it.
Because I was going into these things, I was very confident, I was disciplined, and I was creative. But then I'd, tell them how it needs to be. Right, exactly. I'm confident, disciplined, and creative. I was like, this isn't serving me very well. And I was my own coach, which I do a lot of times. It's like, look at the mirror, like all these things you're helping other people with. It's because you need to help yourself, right? And when you have that beginner's mind, it's like, actually, I'm going to kind of go rogue here and add a 4th row. We only usually have 3 words, right? So I'm going to add that 4th one of collaborative. Right. And I say that every morning along with all my other, triggers that I do for my daily routine. And that has really changed things because it's allowed me to really remember that being collaborative and understanding, embracing other people's ideas. And yeah, I can be creative, disciplined, and confident and all these things. But when I actually make collaborative one of those things that I focus on, it changed everything because it reminded me to actually listen a little more and actually maybe say, you know what? Yeah, I have an idea here, but I have the team together for a reason. Let's go that direction, right? And so cliche as well, but all of us are so much smarter than any one of us, right? And when you're in that flow, and back to the thing, we're kind of going full circle on all the centrifugal looping here. We're talking about being in the flow and just not even having a choice. When that right choice comes up and you feel it in your heart, it's like, oh, we didn't even know that was a direction we could go, but now we're being collaborative and we're talking about these ideas. Let's go do that, right? And then just let it evolve. And it's so exciting, Jay, because then your life evolves and the business evolves to this thing that you didn't even know was possible. The problem, when you think you know what it's going to be, and this is the path, and we're going to get this many members and this whatever, you might get there, and that's not a bad thing to have goals. But if you're so rigid, you're actually putting yourself in prison. And more likely than not, you're stopping yourself from the exponential growth you could otherwise have if you just trust your heart, get the right team around you, understand what you don't know, understand how to go after learning more, keeping the beginner's mind, connecting with the heart, and let life unfold in service to others, and you can't go wrong. And this life becomes even more amazing than you could ever imagine.
Wow. That's awesome. We're talking John Peitzman. I could be with him all day. I don't know about you, but I could just be with him all day. I mean, I know it's like 6:15 in the morning there, but I get it. I could be with him all day. The book's called The Build Framework. We've been spending an hour and 12 minutes, almost an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm not going to keep him any longer because it's rude, and he's only expecting an hour, and he's already been gracious enough to give me the extra 12 minutes. And so, John, by the way, he's brought to you by Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. You're looking to sell your business or buy one, why don't you contact the internationally known company called Inline Business Brokers Advisors. It's at inline.com, ENLIGN.com, and they've been our corporate sponsor from the beginning, as well as our other sponsor, corporate sponsor, and that is Linda Craft and Team Realtors. If you're buying or selling a home, or if you're interested in some commercial real estate, why don't you contact folks at Linda Craft and Team? It's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com, and they sponsor the show, and they're certainly sponsoring JP and his book, The Build Framework. So, JP, here's what I do before I close the show. And first of all, let me just tell you how grateful I am, and I mean that from the very depths in the bottom of my heart. I am so grateful for you. I'm grateful for your work that you do. I am grateful that you've been willing, even at this hour, unearthly hour in the morning, to share your excitement, your enthusiasm, your passion, your love, your talent, your personality, and everything that you are. And please tell, is it Marliesa? Is that her?
It's Marlisa. I should correct that, or I wouldn't be doing my job as a husband.
Yeah, you should do
we
that.
call her Marley, right? Really
Right,
easy,
okay.
but Marlisa, yeah.
Marlisa, okay.
But I loved how you said it. That's a new twist on it. So,
Well, I mean, because there's
what
an
did you say,
IE.
Marlisa?
Yeah, Marliesa. I just think, it's kind of got that little Italian thing going on there.
Marley, easy, right?
Marley's easy. Tell her thank you for sharing some time, allowing you to share this time with me in the morning. And I don't know where the kids are at, but they may be up scooting around or doing whatever. But please tell her thank you so much from me here in the States that she shared you with me, and the kids did too. So give them a kiss and a hug. So before,
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So back at you.
Thank you. So before I let any guests go, and I'm not going to let you go because hopefully you'll stay with me a little bit after we close down. But I always ask every guest, if you could give the listeners of this show a new direction based on the Build Framework and JP, what would be the new direction you would share with the listeners?
Yeah, I would say, to bring it full circle here, that you don't have to live in Struggleville, right? That there's a way out. And even if you don't consider yourself really struggling right now, if you're looking for a better, more fulfilled, connected, joyful, experience in your life that has more balance, then that's the direction I would choose for you. And I would, let you know that you do have the keyword choice in that, and you can absolutely move out of Struggleville or move into even a better version of you and a more successful life.
Awesome. His name is John Peitzman, and the book is called The Build Framework. By the way, I'm going to be posting links to his website. I'll post the Facebook pages that he has available for everybody. So if you're going, how do I get a hold of this guy? How can I see what he's doing? I'm going to post all that stuff on the Jay Izzo webpage where you can find everything. And of course, that will also flow into iTunes, iHeartRadio. You'll see it on iHeartRadio as well, and Stitcher and Spotify and all the other hundreds of places that we're at online. So you'll be able to find the links to all, if not all, most all of John's ways of getting in touch with him. It's an outstanding book. Get it. Seriously, get the book. Read it. You're not going to be disappointed, and it's awesome. And so, folks, as I do every week, you know what? Thank you for watching the show or listening to the show. I got to tell you, you people make the show, and I am so grateful to say that France is now listening to the show, and I want to thank the people in France, and want to thank all my folks in the UK who listen to the show. You guys have been amazing. You are so consistent, and you're always downloading the show and always listening to the show, and I appreciate you, Cardiff and Merton and all those places. Thank you so much. Also, the folks in Germany and the Netherlands and Sweden and I don't even know. There's 15 other countries out there that you're now listening to the show, and Africa and Italy and all over the place. I just wanted to say, in India, by the way, India, you guys are listening so much. I just want to thank the world for listening to the show. And yes, U.S., you guys are awesome. Chicago, you're my number one city in the United States for listening to the show. So I don't know why, but thank you, Windy City. I thank you, L.A., and folks in New York City, and, of course, my folks in North Carolina. And just remember Nebraska, please, because they're the Midwest, as sometimes we call it, and sometimes referred to as a flyover state. Remember them, because there's a lot of bad things happening, and a lot of people are struggling. And so just go to SamaritansPurse.org. That's SamaritansPurse.org, and send them some help, because they really need your help. That said, folks, be inspired, because here's the deal. When you're inspired, you inspire someone else, and in turn, they can inspire others, and that makes this world an amazing place to live. I look forward to seeing you next week, and you know what? Ciao, everybody.
When you lost your confidence, and the answers don't make sense. You got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time to fly. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you have never been before. Find your passion, find your strength.